Okay, I will start sharing my screen now, and we'll just jump right in, okay? All right, so one thing real quick is that if you go to the Compass website, you can download Compass. You can also download some other programs that are really kind of useful, but I don't want to do that right now. The one that is really important is called SVG Exporter. So that's down here, SVG Export. So Compass produces SVG file, or it produces a line plot file. I forget what it's called, but then you need SVG Exporter.
You didn't scroll down far enough.
Oh, can you not see that? This right here, SVG Export. There you go. So you need this program then to take that line plot and make it into an SVG, which can easily be read into Illustrator. And I'll show you all how to do that. Sketch Map Editor is also kind of a cool program. If you like to or want to do a lot of processing of your notes prior to bringing those into Illustrator, Sketch Map Editor allows you to sketch it'll allow you to stitch multiple notes together. It allows you to morph them to the line plot. So, you know, say you were sloppy with the lengths of your lines, or your azimuth was off. This Sketch Map Editor can fix that. You can do a little erasing and things. I've used it before. I don't really use it anymore, so it's okay. All right, so to start with, so what I thought I would do is just kind of pretend like I'm starting a brand new project and just start from scratch. And we'll enter a little bit of data, make a couple of survey files, then export that and basically go through the process of starting up through getting those data into Illustrator. So you open your project manager, and there are more than one way to do this. I always use the project creation wizard, but I create an empty project. All right. So right away, Compass has, in a nutshell, it has like 3 different types of files. Your .mak file is your project file. So this is good if you have like multiple caves. So say you're working on a ranch or something, you know, so a good project could be like, I don't know, we'll just say like imaginary ranch. That can be the file. You can store it anywhere. I like to keep all of my data together. So if I were doing this, I would have like my own folder called like imaginary ranch. So I'll just make one on the desktop real quick. There we go. Great. So now I have an empty project. One of the things that you'll want to do right away is set the project location. So this is essential for if you want to calculate magnetic declination, right? So depending on where you are in the world and when you are there, your magnetic declination changes, and it can be quite a bit. So you want to account for that. So you go into project, set project location. Let's see. Let's see. We'll just make something up here. Or wait. Give me a made up number here. How's that? So you can check and see if that looks. Oh, that's not in a good spot. Okay. Did I get those reversed? Does that look right? Okay, so that's getting closer. There we go. Now we're on land, right? So you can double check to make sure your parameters are kind of correct. Okay, so now we've got that. Now we'll want to insert a new file or create a new file. And so this is kind of weird. So at the highest level, you got your .make file, that's your project. Then you have your next level, what I usually use is at the level of the cave. But the survey files are your lowest level. Those would be like the individual notes that you have for like a day of survey. A lot of people name their surveys after like a part of the cave. So this could be like Scoop City or Awesome Pit or something like that. I don't like to do that. I like to just put the stations. And the reason for that is because if you have a big project, it's like 20 miles long and you've got multiple teams surveying and somebody names something, you know, I have a project and there's a place called I Poop in Your Pants. I have no idea where that is. But if I know the station, then I can easily find it. To me, this is just easier to name your surveys after the stations that are in the survey. Okay, I'm going to save it in the same place. Say this will be like the big cave. Great. So this is your .dat file. All right. So the .dat files, that would be like the second level in the hierarchy. And so that's where I would have like an individual cave. And so that the big cave .dat file then would have multiple survey files. The first one is going to be that A1 through 10 that we just created. All right, so if I can show the surveys, and we've got the big cave.dat, and it's got my A1 through 10 on here. One more thing that you want to do is, let's see, where is it? We've set the project location. Wait, what's going on here? Let's see. Will allow me to calculate declination yet? Yeah, okay. So it says that's where you're at because we already set the location. So it's like, what do we call this? The big cave. The survey team was me, friend one, imaginary friend, whatever. Great. The survey date was, yeah, we just got back today. It was a good trip. Okay, so there are some settings that you want to fix here too. So did you take backsites or not? If you did take backsites, did you record them as a corrected backsite or a non-corrected backsite? Let's say there was that. Did you take LRUDs? And I know that there's all this debate about whether you use LRUDs or not. I usually do LRUDs, and the reason that I usually do them is mainly in cave. If I have somebody at the front of my survey and they're giving me LRUDs, then I can create a little box on my survey so that when I get up to that station, I know that my cross section is going to fit in that box and I can do it real quick. The other thing, if you're really good about keeping your LRUDs, the compass can use those data to estimate like cave volume. It's not a very good estimation, but it's at least comparable to other caves if you're using the same method. So I'm going to pretend that we're doing LRUDs left, right, up, down. So I set the order.
Also, I think Andy Edwards uses LRUDs to put caves into breakout.
Okay. So another reason to do it. And then we want to set the units, right? So this is one of the things that's annoying to me is that you got to go in for every survey and set your meters, assuming that you're doing meters, because it defaults to feet. Apparently you can change for the project, you can change the default so that it automatically sets it up this way. I don't ever do that just because I never remember how. All right, so now you can go in and edit your survey. What I do here is kind of stretch it out so that I can see all of my columns. A1 to 2, say it was 5.3 meters, 32 degrees, that would be 212. Right. So something you'll notice there, if you botch it up, it gives you the errors, right? It tells you, oh, you have an error in your first shot. Oh, okay. So then you can go back and check your notes. So that's useful.
Hey, I have a question about that. Do you know how, what's the percentage of error? Where do we change that?
It defaults to 2 degrees. I have never changed it to anything other than that. And you can also just ignore that error. So say it gives you an error and it's 3 degrees and you're like, yeah, that's because that shot was really hard and there was a magnetic anomaly and 3 degrees is fine. It doesn't hurt the error doesn't hurt anything, so you can leave it in there. But yeah, it'll show up anything over 2. The other thing, and so if you had some comments like attacked by squirrel here.
Does it average across the between the two, or does it take one over the other?
My understanding is it averages between the two if you enable backsights, but don't quote me on that.
If you hypothetically did something silly like north, south, east, west instead of left, right, up, downs, is there any way to make it do that instead?
So there are a few options. I don't think you can do northwest, south, east. You can do things like change the inclination to depth gauge. So say you have like a dive survey and they're not using inclination, but they're using depth below water level. But for LRUDs, it's just, I think it's just what units you're doing it in. I mean, you could always just make a note here that says something like LRUDs are actually northwest, southeast or something like that, I guess. Does that answer the question?
Yep.
Okay. Flags are also really useful. And if you highlight that cell, it tells you what you could put in there. So the one that I use a lot is length. So say that A1 was outside of the cave because you had to get away from the entrance to get a GPS point. And so that first station was from your GPS point to the entrance of the cave. You wouldn't want that shot to count as the length of the cave. So by putting an L in here, you're excluding that shot from the total length of the survey. Or maybe you don't want that shot to show up when you plot it because you only want to see the cave plot. So you can put a P in there as well, and that'll keep it from plotting. Or say you just had this one, you were surveying a loop and you had this one shot that you just know this shot sucks. This is the problem one. You can exclude it from the closure where it looks at loop closure. So flags can be useful. All right, and so the other cool thing that it does is that it auto fills, right? So I didn't have to enter A2 to A3. It just saw that I had a pattern and automatically filled. So that saves some time. But you also have to be careful that, what if my next shot was actually A1 to A3? Then I just have to go back and change that. So we'll do a couple extra shots here. A3 to 4. One of the other things that I really don't like about Compass is that, okay, I'm going to put 7.45. It loses that second decimal place. And it only does that for meters. If you're doing this in feet, it does it to the second decimal place. This is probably something where if we just emailed Larry Fish and said, hey, we use Disto X's now, they're really accurate, and we're in Texas, so we also ran meters. Can you give us that second decimal place? He could probably go in and change that pretty easy. I just have never done that.
Is the data there and not displayed, or is it gone?
No, the data is gone. So that is, I know that some people, that's a big problem for them, is that this doesn't keep the native data. So yeah, it is erased. So if you want that extra degree, or if you want that extra tenth of a or hundredth of a meter, you know, you got to get it back.
Do you know about like importing from an Excel file or something? If you happen to have your data in some other digital format?
I have never tried to import from another file or from another file.
I know you
format.
Or a
You
digital
can
file.
download it. Yeah, you can download it off of, like if you select all your cells and then do like shots and copy rows, like you can transfer to another file or another Compass file or to an Excel. But I haven't been able to figure out like how to upload an Excel file. Like, yeah, some caves I have survey from like, I don't know, anyways.
Back in the day, and they run in an Excel file.
Yeah, like work stuff where I'm like, God damn.
I have no
The
clue.
question is that I would have is, is it only the interface here that you're typing in that loses the data? Like if you import a file, does it keep that data?
I have never imported a file into Compass. I don't think it. I think what you see here is what you get. I don't think there is some data in some other format somewhere else, but I might be wrong. I don't think so though.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that it lost the second decimal. I just thought it was hiding it. It's kind of disappointing.
No, I think it goes away.
That's like a deal.
Now, I will say this though. I have never seen that become a problem. So I've looked at a lot of loops that have great loop closure error, and it doesn't. Does it matter? Does that?
No, I mean, like with the tape survey, would you get that anyway? I mean, you know, I agree.
Yeah, and I
I'm
think-
just surprised. That's all.
I think that this is an artifact of the survey standards that were being used at the time. That with compass, inclinometer, and tape, you're doing really good if that second decimal place matters. But nowadays,
Yeah.
I mean, especially if you're doing backslash with the disto X, you are really accurate, and this could start being a substantial portion of your overall error potentially. So, but you know, that's like I said, I've just never asked Larry to change that, but he might. Let's not use the same. That'd be boring. Whoops. Oh, come on. That was a pit. Okay. So there's our first one. Great. This is another thing that's kind of weird, is that say I'm ready to add another survey file in here. There's not like a create a new file. You have to go edit a cave surveyor file, select the survey that you want to edit, and that's where you get to new survey. So that was it's so to add that second file is weird. It's hidden, which is kind of dumb, but there it is. All right, so big cave, it's another team. Calculate the declination. Great. Okay. Redo your, set it up again. And it is case sensitive. So if you had this as like a lowercase a, it would not recognize this tie-in. I'm not going to do very many stations here. Just do a couple.
$50 and -50 seems like a big difference.
Oh yeah. So it says inclination error 100. I don't usually correct backsides when I enter data. So that's why That's why I accidentally did that. Thanks for catching that.
Ben's smart. He just does the math. Like, this is one of these 180
Yeah,
people.
I've been doing the math since.
Yeah. I know my 180s real good.
All right, that's good. All right. Oh no, what happened? I did something weird. Okay, it's okay though. It doesn't bother. It doesn't matter. All right, so there's the cave. So that's one thing I do like about Compass is that when you're ready to view your line plot, it's real easy to do that, right? The other thing that you can that is useful here is that you can view your cave statistics. And so, right, we surveyed 73 meters. The cave depth was 14.6 meters. You could also look at surveys statistics, right? So you could see, most importantly, which team wins. Team 1 did, because I was on it. This is also where you would go if you wanted to look at blunders. So there aren't going to be any blunders here because we don't have any loops, but I can pull up an existing survey project here in a second and we can look at blunders. And so what that does is it allows you to look at your loop closure error, which is really useful because sometimes people suck when they're surveying. And so you got to fix those blunders. Okay, so here's our cave. And you can do a lot of stuff with the cave viewer that I don't ever use. So like if you've seen those presentations where people show like the cave growing over time by showing the surveys per year, you can do that here with these like complex plots. Where you can color by section, color by survey, exclude dates. So this is where what you would do here is basically just create a series of line plots where you exclude less and less time, and that allows you to create these line plots that grow over time. I never use that. It's real easy to see your survey station.
Colors on the surveys.
Yeah, so there are a couple of really easy settings. So you can do color by depth, and you can go into the preferences and set your depth scale if you want to do that. You can do color by survey, color by year. If you're looking at a single cave and you have multiple DAT files, then you can color by section. A couple other useful things you can do here is obviously you can put it in profile mode. It's easy to rotate things around. You can also measure distances. So, for example, we were out working and a guy asked me, how far is it from the entrance to the end of the cave and in what direction? And I was like, well, we don't have a cave radio location, but I can estimate, that it's for here, the length is 129 feet. It's always feet unless you go into the preferences and change the default to meters. So there are a couple of cool things that you can do in the viewer. It's pretty basic. What I use this for the most part, is to get my plot file that is going to go into Illustrator. One more. Oh, and I also use you can export this line plot into other formats, right? So the useful ones are going to be a shapefile. So if you want to put this into GIS, you can export it as a shapefile, or you can import it as a KML. So if you want to view that in Google Earth. So right, those are real easy, useful things that you can do. So I'm going to save the plot file. Oh, wait, it already exists. That's right. It already exists because whenever you process and compile and view your line plot, it automatically creates one. I forgot. All right, and so that's what you need. So I'm going to close Compass down now and go into SVG Exporter unless you all want to. Was there anything else here that didn't make sense? Or why don't let me open up another project, a bigger project, so you can look at file structure for something that's a little more complicated. Would that be useful, you think?
Yeah, that and the loop closure thing would be nice.
Okay, let's do that. All right, let's see. Do I have anything that was opened recently? Okay, here's our Guatemala one. This should have a lot of stuff in it. All right, so each of these DAT files represents a different cave. And so so this is what I hate, because I'll show you why. All right, I'm viewing the map. Here's the cave. Let's see. Can I move? Let's see. Can I move this without it getting mad at me? Yeah, great. All right. So say I'm drafting this up and I'm looking for the notes, and I need the notes for like this section over here. All right. If I go in, so I'm looking for like the NA 1516 area. If I go in here, I have no clue which of these survey files that is, because I don't know what big is. I don't know what SE means. It's dumb. These should be if this was NA 12 to 15, then I could quickly go in, find it, open it up. So like if there's a blunder, these should be named something different so that you know where to find them. That's my personal.
There's no way to rename those files, huh?
Oh, you could go. Yeah, I could go through and rename them. I mean,
Ben just doesn't care.
I'm not going to do that.
Man, that's some soapbox action right there, Ben.
Yeah. We will only name them by their station names from now on, Ben. Thank you.
Why does Larry even let you name it any other way?
I get that the flip side of that is if this says like NA 12 to 15 and you're looking at these survey files, you're like, I don't know where that is. Whereas maybe you recognize if you have like more descriptive names for your survey files, then it would make sense. But to me,
you could do both. You could totally do big and then be like NA.
You could totally.
Right.
But to me, it's so easy in Compass that you just press this button, and then you've got your map. You can put up the survey stations, and it's very quick to look at your line plot and then go back into here and figure out where it's at. Okay.
If you color by survey, is there any legend to get you back to a certain survey name?
I mean, your actual survey files are pretty dumb. There's no like metadata I think that you can pull up.
If you do your survey, your viewer, and you color it by survey, is there any way to say that orange is Naranjal or whatever?
Yeah, there is. Gosh, doing that is really, all right. So their things are colored by survey. I'd have to play or figure out where that is. I think it's color sections, color surveys. Yeah, you go into here, color surveys, and then you would have to set this to green, but see, that didn't work. This is where you would do it, but I don't remember how to do it. It's not it. It seems like it would be really obvious that you just like click the one that you want and then set it to the color that you want, but it's not. And I don't know why. I have used this before, but it's been a long time. And I remember just being really annoyed at how unintuitive it was. So the answer is yes, but I don't know how.
Also, like I will say that as another self-taught compass user, the help manual is very useful, and it actually like does get you a long way. It's not
Yeah.
this like terrible help manual like you're used to, you know, like it's pretty, if you wanted to figure out how to do this, you could go to a section in the help manual very easily and figure it out. So
And that's when I have a complicated question that I don't know the answer off the top of my head, I go in there and start digging for it.
yeah, like I was surprised at, you know, I'm not one of those user manual readers in any means,
Yeah.
and it was very useful. So
Yeah. Yeah. I just don't use this stuff very often. So so I'm almost embarrassed to even do this because I know it's not going to be great. Okay, so this is for blundered loops. You just have to press, whoops, you don't do that. Compile, that's what I was looking at. Close, that generates your closure statistics. Show errors after closure. There we go. Oh, well, so I don't have very many loops in here, and they're both good. And I forget what this is based off of. But say that it was bad. It's basically, it looks at like the number of shots and the total length of the shots, and it uses this deviation from predicted, as long as it's not more than, I forget, 2 standard deviations or something. It gives you basically good, fair, and bad are your options here. But you could go through and analyze that loop. And what it does is that it gives you what it thinks are your most likely blunders. So if you change the length of this shot to 4.8 feet, it would increase your error, or it would reduce your error. I have very rarely, this is only useful in like the very rare occasions where maybe you put like a negative instead of a positive, or you had things flipped 180 degrees. Usually this is not useful to me. What this usually tells me is that, like, crap, I need to go back and resurvey that loop because it was bad. Only very rarely have I gotten lucky. Before I do that, I would go back and just manually check my notes to make sure that it's entered correctly, because that's like your number one source of error. It's just not entering them correctly. But it's good to at least be able to go back and look at that. So if I do it let me see how many loops I have here for the whole project. Oh, just what? Huh. That's weird. Maybe it can't do it for the whole project. That seems odd. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. Well, there may not be that many loops in this system. Let me look at another one here that has more loops.
one other thing that would be useful, I was thinking about it, like, so you set your declination in the beginning whenever you're setting everything up. Like, I usually will set my GPS points on each individual cave, and then from there I calculate declination.
Yes.
Did you set a GPS point, or like that might be something that's good to just show like what that looks like? Because if you want to like actually export it to a KMZ for Google Earth, then like you need the GPS point. Otherwise, if you don't have that data, it won't export the file.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I didn't show that. Let's see. That is, so that's what's called your file nodes. So when you go into your DAT file for an individual cave and edit your file node, this is where you can add your linked or fixed station. So for this cave, there's only one GPS point at the entrance. But yeah, thanks, Kara, for catching that I didn't talk about doing that.
As a side note, I was just thinking about the declination for each of those. But so you would recommend setting the same declination, or like would you calculate declination for each individual cave?
I calculate declination for each individual survey.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And so as long as you have a fixed station for your cave, and your subsequent surveys can tie into the survey that has that station, it'll be able, it calculates individual declinations for each one. So I don't know if these, so if I just go into a given one, yeah, so the survey declination there is 5. That's probably the same for all of these because these were all really close. Oh, no, see, so it's slightly different because they were a few months apart. But yeah, I do the survey declination on an individual survey, and as long as you set the project location, all you got to do is click that declination button. Oh, look, I haven't set it for this one. Shame on me.
Do it.
I'll do it later. Because I've got it for the individual thing. One thing I will show you, one thing that's really weird here is that, whoops. Most of the time I'm collecting data in like decimal degrees. And when you go in there, all it has is UTMs. So if you want to use decimal degrees, you have to click use UTMs, which doesn't make any sense. But if you click use UTM, that allows you to go into what's called the geocalculator, which is what you've already seen, where you can then include your decimal degrees. To me, Compass is just really weird. Like, it's not very intuitive in how you set project locations and GPS coordinates for individual sites, but
it's a little weird. One note on that might be useful again for you Google Earth users is like the datum that you project into. So like if you click it again, it lets you drop down on datum, and you should probably use like whatever Google Earth is using, which I think is WGS in 1984. So like
I believe that's what Google Earth is using.
Right, and so I just think that's kind of useful because like I go back and forth between ArcGIS and Google Earth, and so I think about projections, but it doesn't matter that much like when it comes down to it.
Good call. Do you remember, Kara, the enable data conversion? I was in a big discussion about this years ago, but I can't remember what it was or why you would click that or not. So I just leave it blank nowadays.
Remember.
Okay, great. All right, so now we'll go and look at our the line plot that we made a while ago, and see how to get that into Illustrator. So this is the SVG exporter. So the first thing you got to do is open your PLT file. That's the line plot. PLT is for plot. So I put that in the desktop. Fuck you.
Imaginary ranch.
Oh, thank you.
Let's go into the Hazel folder. She's so cute.
There are no cave data in there. All right, so there's your cave plot, and it's taken those LRUDs and it's made walls. I actually really like SVG exporter because what this allows you to do is really kind of set up your map before you start. Because what it allows you to do is it allows you to scale things, right? So, I can zoom out and zoom in. It allows you to set the paper size. So, right now it's set at an 8.5 by 11, but maybe I think that this cave would look better in portrait, right? So between the paper and the position scale, you can really kind of decide what you want, how you want your cave oriented. Maybe I don't want north to be pointing up, maybe I want it to be like this way. So you can spin it around and kind of see what you think is good. What I usually try to use like a sensible scaling factor. So I would not use like 2.38. Maybe I'd use like 2.5 or 3. I will say, don't underestimate how much space other map elements are going to take up. So like, your first instinct might be, well, I want the cave to be as big as possible, so I'm gonna like make it real big. if you do this, by the time you put a title and a legend and cross sections and random text and a profile, you're not going to have enough room. So, you know, just make sure that you leave yourself like probably like that much room. So when you have it like you like it, let's use that. North is up. I'm looking at plan view. Then you can export the SVG file. I'm using Illustrator. I always remove the tags because I don't know what they do. I remove Inkscape tags. I don't use them. I'm not using this. So finished. And then I'd call that like Big Cave plan. Great. And then I would do the same thing for profile. So I'd want to keep it at the same scale. Again, you can, you know, rotate it around to maximize the extent shown. I'm going to leave it the same because this is all just made up. Okay, that's all the same. Great. And so then you're ready. Then you're ready to import those SVG files into Illustrator. Oops. All right. So by default, it sets us up. It sets you up to be able to round trip. So if you look at these layer names, those look straight up like what you get out of walls, right? A lot of these things I never use. I don't like having the background, so I turn that off. I keep the reference. So the reference actually has some useful information. It tells you what scale you were using. That's the most useful information and whether you've rotated it or not. And that's useful if, say I don't want to go through all the trouble of round tripping, which I never do, but I do have some extra survey, and so I need to bring in another line plot. I can go in here and I can look at that reference to replicate exactly what the line plot looks like. That way I can, if I need to, I can bring in a new line plot, overlay it on here without having to move any of my sketches or anything else around. Does that make sense? Comp tracing, those are your walls. I always turn those off. Mask I turn off. The grid I turn off. Basically, this is what it looks like when I'm working on it. And so from here, then you can bring in your notes. It has a layer for notes. I always end up moving that layer down to the bottom. And then I would do the same for the profile. I would open it up. And what I would do is I would just bring this into the same document so that my plan and profile are all on one document. So I turn off everything that I don't use. So that it's just the line plot. So I've got the survey and the labels, the legend, turn off the frame.
Is everybody frozen?
I think Ben locked up.
He looks really good though.
Yeah, he looks great.
Also, this is a game changer, Kara.
The SVG.
Holy effing, but also why,
Laughing so hard.
why would we group the arrow and the scale with the plan, the profile here? I would just
Wait.
want the line plot by itself, maybe.
What?
Well, no, that way the scale bar scales with the line plot, so it all stays in scale, right?
But if it's the same as the plan, you might not want, hi Ben, welcome back.
Okay, so what did I not go over
That was awesome.
that you were looking for?
That was pretty much it. So I didn't know about SVG. I just print to PDF at whatever scale and then just use that. I know, such a bitch, right?
I much prefer with the SVG, then you can go in and
Oh, totally. It's obviously way better.
Yeah.
And your scale is there for you. Like you don't have to make a scale every time. And
Yep.
yeah, like
you can turn the station labels on or off, make them bigger, smaller, change the line thickness.
yeah. I'm so glad that my projects were kind of small before, because that would have sucked if I had a bunch of big projects without that.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, I think that was really useful. Whenever all the main stuff that I use personally. So there's nothing that I wouldn't really add for, like, you know, if you want to like go home or, you know, stay home and do a map now, you could do it.
And I was telling a few of y'all before we got really going, Larry Fish, the guy that made the program, is super responsive. So if there's something that you can't figure out with the help, Larry usually gets, if you send him an email, he usually gets back to you within a day or two. He asks for money to download those programs, but you don't have to pay money to download them. So I downloaded them and used them for like 3 or 4 years. And after several years of using them, I was like, okay, yeah, I've used these enough. And I have some questions to ask Larry. So I'm going to pay for his program. And then I feel okay asking him questions. But, you know, that way you can download it, try it out, see if you like it. And then if you think it's worth the money, pay him some stuff. But I'm always happy to answer questions too. I have tried to round trip Encompass a couple of times, and it kind of worked, and it was kind of a huge pain in the ass. And I actually found it easier to just bring in my new line plot, cut the elements of my map apart and move them so that they line up with the new line plot, and then stitch them back together. And I know even Peter, who has the round tripping stuff down pretty well, will spend several hours doing round tripping. If there's a little mistake, you know, like a few symbols are in the wrong layer and so they get morphed instead of moved, round tripping just sucks. But you don't have to do it that much. I mean, you only have to round trip if you're like bombing through big passage and you come to a new entrance far away or some unexpected big loop, and it really changes your line plot. The other thing is just don't get in a hurry. Don't start drafting your cave map after the first day of survey. Wait till the survey is done. Then you know you won't have to round trip. Or wait until at least maybe a year in if it's a multi-year project. That way you minimize the number of times that you have to bring in new data, because every time you bring in new line plot data, it increases the chance that you're going to have to like move stuff around to get it to match. But it's not a big deal if it's smaller caves, which is most of what I do are smaller caves. So.